Hello, film fans. Welcome to the Film vs. Film podcast. My name is Martin Harries, your host, and I'm joined by the film encyclopedia man, Boaz Dix. We are a couple of filmmakers on occasion, but mainly can't stop yapping about movies. On this podcast, every episode we pick a topic from a film that's coming out at the cinema or on VOD. Myself and Boaz pick our favourite film from that topic, and we battle it out to decide which film will become the greatest film of all time, according to two film geeks from Wiltshire, England. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a review and subscribe. Hello, Podsters. This week, as a huge movie, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness is finally out in cinemas. We'll be focusing on MCU sequels, or rather for this week, Avenger films that aren't actually Avenger films. And we have guests again, people. This is awesome and quite remarkable. From the Genre Geeks, AJ, how are you, sir?
Hey, what's going on, man? I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Cool. And, of course, I am joined by a man who tried to start his own podcast revolution, but unfortunately didn't print enough pamphlets. But then I was like, no, you don't need pamphlets, dude, to make a podcast. Yeah. You just need a decent computer, a decent mic, and a decent buddy.
Yeah,
that's all you need.
And to be made of rock hard, be rock hard.
I am, of course, talking about Mr. Boaz Dix. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm great, man. Marvelous. I'm marvelous. Bad fun.
There you go.
Yeah, there we go. Worked it in somehow.
Should we go with our pick first then, Boaz?
Yeah, right.
What is our pick for MCU sequels?
We picked Civil War. Yeah, I just quite like it. You know, I think it's pretty cool. I think it's one of my favorite Captain America ones. I'm not sure if it's, it's up there. I like Civil War. I like this one. It's also, one of those things. I think it's one of my favorite Avengers one, and it should have just been an Avengers film.
Yeah, it very much felt like Avengers 2.5.
It does feel like an Avengers 2.5. And, just a ton happens that has, huge ramifications.
Yeah. For me, I think if you just disregard maybe the last two Avenger films, this is probably the best Marvel film for me that they've done. I think the Russos have done an absolutely remarkable job with these characters, especially Captain America and Iron Man, especially in this movie. Other films in contention, I was thinking for MCU sequels like Iron Man 3. I do like that one.
I'm glad you like that. A lot of people disrespect that one, and I really like it too.
Yeah, I feel like there's a transatlantic divide because of Trevor Slattery. I think a lot of Brits love Iron Man 3 because of Trevor, and a lot of Americans don't like it because of Trevor. They're like, who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah.
And we're like, he's one of us.
Pretending to be the Mandalorian. The
Mandarin, that's great. Yeah,
Mandarin,
I agree completely. That's funny.
Yeah. And a lot of Brits are like, yeah, Trevor, he's from East London.
I love that. Yeah. Y'all picked a great pick. Civil War is one of my favorite MCU movies as well. Pick a day, and now that might be my number one, it might be my number three, but I really love it. It's, again, even if you guys recall, it's a movie that people were excited for almost a different reason, because that's when Sony and Marvel had their little deal worked out. And they had that trailer that shocked the world. And I still remember watching it for the first time.
Spider-Man,
Yeah, that was incredible.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that. Where he takes the shield, flips, hey, everyone. And you're like, oh, my God. They put him in it.
I got a text from my friend that was like, you got to watch this. I'm like, all right. So then I was holding my phone, watching it. And then my breath. I remember it holding it in my body because they set up the whole under rose. And then you hear the web shot. And I'm like, oh. And it was just, again, this is before this was a possibility. As far as we were all concerned, they were never going to let Spider-Man play with the MCU stuff. So it was just, that alone is worth the ticket in and of itself.
Definitely.
And it's kind of depressing and kind of a little funny that Sony are trying to make their own universe, Spider-Man universe, without Spider-Man. It's just, please stop, people. It's not working.
Yeah, it was. I don't know if you guys saw Morbius yet, but don't.
No, I don't really want to be honest.
You're good.
Boaz, what happens in Captain America Civil War?
So Captain America is now the leader of the Avengers during a mission in Lagos, Nigeria, my mother's home country. Yay, shout out. Yeah. While fighting a supervillain called Crossbones, he explodes and takes down a Wakandan embassy. This kind of forces the world's governments to sort of offer the Avengers, kind of force the Avengers to sign the Sokovia Accords, where they'll be put under UN regulation. Captain America is very much against this. Iron Man is thinking this is sort of the way to go, and so the team sort of splits on those lines. At the same time, Captain America's buddy, the Winter Soldier, gets framed for the murder of the King of Wakanda, and Captain America thinks he's innocent, and the real villain is Baron Zemo, who has basically been engineering this conflict to get the Avengers to fight one another.
So, directing then, the opening action scene in Lagos is pretty brutal, I would say.
Yeah.
Like Captain America and Black Widow get hit by some really massive blows, like Cap deflects a rocket and literally falls down a building. Like Black Widow gets blown out of an armored car using a guy as a shield as the grenade goes off. Like the Russos definitely tread the line of being brutal enough before Disney have to come in and say, whoa, that's too much. But I think my favorite bit was when like Wanda like throws Cap into the building and then he bounces his shield around the room and knocks out a guy cold but still standing up, and then for good measure like kicks him as he's falling down for good measure,
Yeah, straight into a table or something.
And also I think it's probably Black Widow's best action, I would say, in Marvel films.
I would agree.
That opening scene.
They go real wishy-washy on how much of a punch she can really take, because in that scene where she's in a tank, guy drops a grenade, she just ducks behind a dude and survives the grenade blast. I can squint my eyes about, the realism of these movies.
Yeah, she's not a human being.
But it's like, come on, that's a bit much.
Yeah, she has to have a secret.
Yeah, Cap couldn't have thrown his shield in there for her. That's not what kills you with a grenade. It's the shock at that point when you're 3 feet from a grenade.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. That opening action that's the perfect tempo to set up for this movie. And you're right, the Russos really did change action in the MCU, because like when Winter Soldier, that opening scene with Cap getting on the boat, is the first time we've seen these guys be kind of brutal in a world where people are dropping buildings on each other. Just to see a guy get kicked in the chest and like fly into a building, pretty hardcore. And especially, I think it's the coolest stuff we've seen Falcon do, I think, in the entire... So thus far, even with his own solo series, that opening bit with him was really cool.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think they did the action. They do a very good job of just letting every character sort of have their own signature fighting style. It's choreographed, but it's choreographed in a way that it's scrappy. That you're like, these people are probably going to get very, very hurt. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't look clean and tidy.
And also with the cameras, like it's all very handheld. It's a lot of run and gun stuff. Just makes it feel a little more gritty, I would say.
Yeah, I was getting kind of like flashbacks from like Jason Bourne, the kind of tight camera moving, trying to keep up with the frenetic action that's going on. I was definitely getting vibes of that.
Yeah, speaking of which, something I really liked, I think it was before the action even kicked off, it was when they were all talking kind of secretively, like they had the whole baseball cap sunglasses bit. The camera, like you said, Jason Bourne, that's a really good analogy for it, because the camera is really tight. But if you'll notice, there's always something really prominent in the foreground during that scene. They do a really great job of hiding the character during the scenes where they're trying to be secretive and stuff, which is, if you watch that scene back, it's really incredible. Yeah. There's always something like right there in the foreground blocking a corner of the screen. Incredible. That part was incredibly well directed and really gives you that sense of hiding and secrecy.
Yeah. I love how the action scene in Romania develops. It begins quite quietly with Bucky just appearing behind Cap in his apartment. Then like the German soldiers start appearing again, and it's very brutal. Sometimes they're unwilling to like work together with some moves, but I'm not sure how like a mattress stops bullets. But hey, in that bit,
like I said, the physics in this movie gets a little wishy-washy.
But the stairwell fight again, like really creative with Bucky using like the battering ram with his metal arm, felt really powerful and really packed a punch there. And when Black Panther shows up on the roof with Bucky, Black Panther felt so cool in that moment. For me, it's still his best fight scene we've seen of him, and I include his own movie in that. Then the action like develops brilliantly on the road, where we have this brilliant shot of Bucky, Cap, and Black Panther running, and the camera like whips across to catch all of them. Just a great shot, I think, there. I think my favorite part was when like Bucky catches this bike when a guy is riding it and somehow flips it around, jumps on it in slow motion. That was very cool.
Yeah, definitely. I was just going to say one of the few instances of slow motion, because there are a couple of scenes where it's like
it's not many,
just these incredibly but I think it's used well, used sparingly, and used on like the coolest moments. Not just do it like willy nilly everywhere, but that scene is awesome. It's just this big spread of him taking the bike, and you're like, wow, that's picture perfect. I think also one of my favorite shots is like the most iconic for the film, and it's basically its poster at the end with Captain America and Iron Man. You know, him blocking Iron Man's repulsors. And I love that they do the slow motion there, because you're like, oh man, that gives me chills.
Perfectly done. One of my favorite shots of the movie is when it's actually not the fight in the apartment. It's when Bucky hops out of the window. I think it's Bucky or in like a Black Panther's chasing him, and the camera follows them as they jump out of the. I think it's from the rooftop to rooftop. It's just crazy to be alongside them during that scene, just because the cameraman doing it. But have you guys actually seen how they shot the bit with them running along the cars and stuff in that chase
a while
scene?
Ago? Remind me.
It was crazy. It was called a magic carpet, and what they did was they had a long, I forgot the material, but they had basically like a long piece of, let's just call it carpet, tied to a truck. And the actors would stand on the carpet, which would, pull them, and then they would run on the carpet as the cars were driving. So they were actually running during those scenes next to the cars. And it's kind of like if you've ever been in like the airport and then they have those like escalator things. If you run on that, you kind of feel like you're robotic. Yeah. That's more or less how they shot that. Christ. So like it's incredible. It was just super cool looking.
What do we reckon of Black Panther's action though in this film? I think this is his best film in terms of action.
Yeah, I love Black Panther in this too. Perfect introduction to a character. Let's not forget, because we get introduced to Spider-Man and Black Panther in this movie. One of my favorite details with Black Panther is he's silent when he runs and when he lands. So like you'll hear, Bucky land, it's like a big thunk, especially his fist hitting the ground. Black Panther, more though than we've ever seen from even Batman and stuff, just silent as he hits the ground. That type to me, like you said, like there's in this action movie, every single character has character within their action. And so like the fact that Black Panther is able to land silently and stuff, and his claws able to tear up all the scratch even Cap's shield, it tells us everything we need to know.
It's all vibranium, so makes sense.
It's great story through visuals.
Yeah, absolutely. And even though like he's fighting other heroes, and he particularly fights Bucky, who's like killed his dad, but he's always going for kill shots. He's always trying to like scratch him up or cut him up. You do feel like he is he's an animal when he fights. So
absolutely,
yeah, very distinctive fighting style compared to Cap and all the others. The last fight scene in Siberia is really interesting because it's very character driven, I find, especially from Iron Man's point of view. Like Tony is just driven by rage and does some very like reckless things in for me when he's got like Bucky up against the wall at one stage. He tries to like launch a rocket like right next to his head, which would probably blow both of them up. Before Cap intervenes, he tries to like eyeball a rocket at Bucky, but he could have used like a laser instead or something else. There's an element as well when he's fighting Cap that he's holding back a little bit. Tony stops Bucky near the end, and it's just him fighting Cap. He obviously doesn't want to kill him, just stop Captain America. So it's just really interesting, not in terms of choreography, but just in terms of like all the characters' emotional states and how they're fighting each other in that last scene. Definitely.
That scene is so important. I mean, not only just for the story in the sense of Iron Man has a point, Bucky is wrong in this. And then it really does help split the audience in terms of which side are you on in this? Are you on Cap's side and more of like, it wasn't Bucky's fault, or are you more Iron Man of like, that doesn't matter. He killed his parents. So yeah, like I said, like the emotion behind that scene is incredible. That 2v1 that between Cap and Bucky versus Iron Man is just incrable. There's a reason why that was the trailer shot that you couldn't get away from. And the fact that they didn't cut, there was like there was like 5 or 6 seconds where they're both, Cap and Bucky are both just tearing Iron Man apart, and it doesn't cut or change angles. Incredible. Yeah, the action in that was dope. It was super incredible.
I feel like as well, if Iron Man was level-headed and there wasn't really a relationship between these characters, Iron Man would take them out pretty easily. But because he's so just, rageful, he just makes so many mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, he can call like a nuke from like a satellite if you really wanted and just drop it on the entire bunker.
Yeah.
But I also kind of think like he really doesn't want to hurt. Well, he definitely wants to hurt Bucky, but he doesn't want to kill Cap. You know, they are friends. He just wants him to fuck off for a bit. So while he kills his friend,
Exactly.
So yeah, I do like the emotion in that fight. It definitely does feel like a really good culmination to the film. You're like, oh, I like both characters, but you know they're doing this fight to the death, and I love how it's shot as well when Cap finally beats him and knocks the helmet off. And then raises the thing, and I'm like, oh my god, he's gonna decapitate him! And a shot to Iron Man, just bloodied, like Jesus Christ, like don't kill me! And then, boom, wide shot into the chest. I love that setup because it's like, whoa, really makes you feel right.
Yeah. But then you're like, of course he's not going to kill him. Of course he's not going to go for the head. But yeah, in that one moment, you're like, yeah.
In the way it's shot, you're just like, raises up, it's on him. The camera's on him. You're like, oh my god, it's on him. Oh my god! It's like it's setting up this thing, but boom, and then it's not. So I think for a split second, I do get tricked, in how it's filmed. I'm like, yeah, they might go for this, but they don't. So I like how it ends.
Yeah, for that half.
Yeah, for that half a second.
Favorite shots, people. Favorite scenes. What are we going for?
I gotta go. That opening action scene to me is just so good. Yeah. The way that we have not really, we got a taste of it in the other Avengers, like the first Avengers, where you got to see them be a coherent team. But in that opening action scene, the way they were handing off people, they were calling out different stuff where I think it was Black Widow or it was Wanda who was taking on a guy. And then she's like, Sam or whatever. And then Sam comes in to finish the guy off. Like it was super cohesive and stuff.
Yeah, I think it was Wanda flung him up in the air with her telekinesis and he fucking slammed into it.
Yeah, it was like combos between everyone. It was just so good.
Yeah, that was good. And like she's being overwhelmed by some guys and he fires some rockets. And it's just a great usage of their abilities together.
And I think it's the first time as well, especially when like Crossbones and Cap fight, you're like, ow, ooh, you feel the hits. You're like, that's painful.
Yeah. Especially when he like knocks him through several tables or something.
Boaz, favorite shot or scene?
I think favorite shot is Captain America and Iron Man and as I said, like the sort of repulsor deflector, poster shot. I think that's my favorite shot. Actually, I would say my favorite scene is probably against the policeman in Romania. I just get like huge Jason Bourne vibes from that whole series, whole fight.
That's a great point.
There were some other shots I actually like, I want to say, because I'm a massive Spider-Man fan. I love that shot where Spider-Man and War Machine are swinging / flying towards Ant-Man. Yeah. I think that's just fucking, that's brilliant.
Yeah, I'm going for the obvious. The airport fight is really cool. I just love it.
The airport fight is really cool. Yeah. And I love how they get so many people to square off against each other. Yeah. You're like, it's almost like, what would happen if Black Widow fought Ant-Man? It's like, why would you put these? Yeah, just how would that work out? Or Clint versus Black Panther, what would that look like? Or Winter Soldier versus Spider-Man, what would that look like? I think it's just they do all this, and you're like, wow, they actually their fighting styles, just how they interact. It's like, oh wow, that's kind of interesting.
I think my favorite parts were with all like the fairly new characters to the MCU, like Spider-Man fighting Falcon and Bucky in the terminal when like Spider-Man catches his arm. That was great. Like Spider-Man stringing up giant Ant-Man, that was cool. And like Ant-Man inside Iron Man's suit is just a really cool visual, very creative. I guess the only thing that holds it back is the setting is pretty bland, I would say.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's an airport, yeah. If they did it like in a city street or something, or something more happening, something a little more interesting.
I think a lot of the criticism of Marvel films, looking bad was because of this scene possibly, but on the other hand it allows the characters to really pop out of the screen, because they're all very colorful and superhero-y. But what's your favorite moment in that scene, AJ? Too many to choose from.
That's a lot. I gotta say, I think it's when Spider-Man catches the terminal, the like walkway thing. He catches it, and the way Cap is impressed by it. I think just that moment, because we're learning at the same time. The first time, we're watching this, we're like, what kind of version of Spider-Man are we getting here, and how strong are they going to make Spider-Man? And you get that shot, and even Cap is impressed by it, and that's why he's like, where are you from? And that whole interaction between them about, oh, Brooklyn, Queens. Great to me, because I'm such a Spider-Man friggin' webhead that I love that type of scene. Just gets me giddy, and so I love. I can't get away from that bit.
Cool. So AJ, John Regeek, what is your score for directing?
I think this is an incredibly directed movie. Yeah. I think it was an ambitious movie. I don't think there was even the down scenes where it's a lot of dialogue and stuff. It's well shot. The way the camera is able to still move through the scene and stuff. Like I'm reminded of the scene where Secretary Ross is explaining the Sokovia Accords, and the camera's still spinning and moving, and so putting us in that scene, still giving it momentum. So I think it was well directed. I would give it I give it a 9 out of 10.
You may use decimals if you want.
I'm giving it a solid 9. There's still parts that I think that decisions, like I said, the explosion, with Black Widow in the tank and stuff. There's a few bits that I'm like, I can forgive it, but I'm definitely stalling for a second there.
I feel like Disney were like, no, you got to mop up all this blood, people. No, you can't have that.
Yeah.
Baz, what should we go for directing for Civil War? I'm thinking 9s as well. I think the Russos are just naturals with it when it comes to directing action. I know with some scenes they've probably got second unit directors in there, but they've still got to have final say on these things. But I think that especially when they come from a TV background, going straight into Marvel and like really nailing the action like they do, I'm just like, that is impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I've always respected how the Russos do action, because the quality in action from Cap, the first Avenger, to Winter Soldier and Civil War is just like night and day. It's just so much better. And I think that's definitely that is 100% what got them the gig for, Infinity War and Endgame, and the action of that is pretty damn inventive as well. Yeah, it's pretty damn spectacular. So, I think they're great action directors, There's no question about it.
So 9.3?
Maybe a 9 or a 9.1.
9.1.
It's still great. It's still really, really great.
Right, screenplay then. Do we think the Russos got it right with all the groupings of superheroes against each other? Did they get it spot on, or would you have made changes?
Yeah, I would say so. I don't know how much of a comic guys you are, but the original Civil War comic I'm a huge fan of, and it was a different reason that they split the heroes apart. Yeah. And so, I mean, I won't get into the nerdiness of it, but going into this movie knowing that, I'm like, what are they going to do? And I think in this movie they picked the perfect plot device to split the team apart, because they really do, more so frankly than in the comics even. Each side has a point. And I'll say I'm actually on Iron Man's side in this. I think that Tony he's got a better point than Cap. I think Cap is arguing ideals versus what's literally happening in the world. I'd love to hear your guys' take on that.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
I think having the guys who are like, we want to serve, that's our job. That's Iron Man. He's like, our job is to serve the world. And they are asking us, the very people that are asking, or that we're protecting, are asking us to please sign these accords. That way where there's some kind of accountability on us. And I think the guys who would agree with that, it made sense for that to happen.
I would say kind of like both sides, at least in the context of the film, and if you look at the previous entries, kind of make sense in their arcs in the movies. Like Captain America, at the first one, he is a Boy Scout, basically do whatever the government tells him to. In the Avengers, he's slightly, they keep secrets from him. That kind of pisses him off, but he's still okay with that. And Avengers 2 as well, still very patriotic. But then you have stuff like the Winter Soldier, where like his confidence in the government is completely rocked. Like S.H.I.E.L.D. is, just an evil organization. And I think it kind of makes sense from his point of view of, why should we have some government body tell us what to do? Like, he has been betrayed, at least in the previous films, by authority. He was very much, he'll listen to authority too. He's just constantly been betrayed by authority. So why would he give up the Avengers' autonomy? Where if you look at Iron Man, he's got like completely the opposite arc. He's been very irresponsible, and you just see like how his irresponsibility has just caused huge catastrophes, like Ironmonger and Ultron and all that stuff. And they even put that like the stuff with Ultron is his fault. The stuff that happened in Sokovia is his fault, and he's kind of realizing, I have always been completely reckless, and so it's almost like they do a heel turn, but it kind of makes sense in the trajectory of their previous movies.
I think the final battle and emotional beats work so well at the end is because Tony Stark starts off the movie in a very emotionally vulnerable place, in my opinion. He creates this illusion tech that can play out old memories. We see a young Tony just before his parents die. I mean, the way he wanted it to happen, to see him for the last time. So he's still hiding a lot of emotional baggage there. Pepper Potts doesn't turn up at the MIT event. They're clearly taking a break, which must have been really tough. Then the revelation from Viola Davis's character that her son died in Sokovia because of him in her eyes, and Tony has no comeback at all, which we are not used to seeing. So Tony is dealing with a lot right from the get-go in this film. When Tony is talking to the Avengers, he's already made up his mind. He's already made up his decision and says, there's no decision-making process here. We need to be put in check. Even before that, he's read up on the kid, what he's done in his life before Sokovia in detail, and it's like Tony is done feeling guilty about all the collateral damage they cause, regardless if they win the fight. The pain is becoming too much for Tony. Certainly in the beginning moments of this film, it's kind of really interestingly set up for his character. Do you feel like he's dealing with a lot of different emotions at the start of this movie?
Absolutely, yeah.
It all boils over at the end,
I'll touch again on the comics that scene between it's Alfred Woodard and Robert Downey Jr. That scene plays out in the comics, but it's a different reason where a kid gets killed by actual wannabe superheroes. There were a bunch. I won't get into the details of it, but the reasoning and stuff was different, and so that does not exist in this movie. And so I was still shocked when they had that scene. I'm like, they adapted it, and that's this whole game, this whole comic book movies is about adapting. Yeah. Perfectly adapted. Well, that scene was so well written, and how they still carried the spirit of that scene, where that scene is the reason Tony sides with the Accords, because he realizes this is right. The whole saying of 1,000 deaths is I forgot what exactly. There's 1,000 deaths is is a statistic. One death is a tragedy, and so having a single face that Tony can associate with consequence was brilliant. I thought that was so well done, because you have to have a good reason of how splitting these brothers between Tony and Cap. There has to be something that really fundamentally divides them, and that scene with Tony was perfect, because in the comics it's in front of it's at the kid's funeral, thousands of reporters, bunches of people, and I prefer in this movie where it's intimate and it's just those two, because then it isn't a show. It's clearly not a show. It's Tony's foundation being rocked, and his questioning his very philosophy on being a superhero and all that stuff. So I think this perfectly written, perfectly performed too, but just the screenplay of it, the script of it was just so perfect.
But from Steve Rogers' point of view, he's like, no, we can't sign it, because they'll give up their choice to go where they feel they need to go to help people. In government control, governments change and agendas change, is what Steve says. But Steve is not being influenced by any emotional motives. He's a soldier. He's trained to keep his emotions to one side. Then the scene stops fairly abruptly when Steve gets a call saying that Peggy has just died. Now, Steve is a little emotionally vulnerable in this moment, and when Sharon says the things Peggy told her, reinforcing Steve's values, Steve sticks to his guns even in a fairly emotional moment. So, Steve is able to see past his emotions, and Tony isn't early on. So it's kind of an interesting juxtaposition between those characters. I feel like Tony is being very influenced by the emotional side of the Avengers, whereas Steve, he has an emotional gut punch with Peggy's death, but he still keeps to his values. So it's kind of, they both have an emotional thing to deal with, and they both veer off in their own ideologies that's triggered by an emotional event.
I would say at the start of it, it is an intellectual debate. It's an intellectual thing of, should we surrender power or not and be accountable? And I agree with what you're saying. Like, Iron Man is definitely, he's arguing from a sort of, he has like an emotional justification for sticking to his guns that, yeah, actually they should be accountable. I think at the halfway point, Captain America is very, he's the straight man. He's trying to use logic. But I think in the halfway point when Bucky gets involved, he's very much about emotion. Like, I think he heel turns as well. He's like, he's got no evidence to believe that Bucky is not a guilty man and they shouldn't just arrest him immediately. But he just, that guy's his friend. He just loves that guy. He's been through a lot with him.
He's kind of running on instinct. He kind of knows that Bucky wouldn't do that when he's not under the influence of, the Winter Soldier.
So, I feel like both of them, there is like this intellectual argument there, but I think they are both very much swayed from it and let their emotions sort of get the better of them. Iron Man with like the collateral damage and stuff. Captain America with just trying to prove his friend's innocence.
I agree. I think the killing Agent Carter for that was perfectly well timed for the story. I think it really did help put both. I mean, because like I said, like both characters get rocked emotionally in this, and this is Cap's emotional thing, which steers him in the other direction as well. And something that's funny too is the speech that I forgot the character's name, but Carter's niece or whatever that
Sharon,
Cap ends up. Yeah, Sharon. The speech she gives at the funeral is actually word for word lifted from the comics. That's Cap says it actually.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And so again, it's a nice little like kind of Easter egg thing that happens there. But the message of that scene of compromise when you can, but when you can't, don't. And that's kind of the spirit that really makes Cap, I feel like, plant his flag, more or less to say, in the ground of I disagree with these accords. So even if it makes us outlaws, we're not going to sign those accords because I think that's wrong. No, you move, basically, according to the 117 countries that are asking Avengers, please stop. Yeah. But yeah, like I said, like that again, it's great motivators in this. I think all this is done in like 2.5 hours. It's incredible.
Yeah. I think there's so many characters that have like journeys that they're going through here. It's
full arcs. I mean, look at Black Panther. He learns an entire lesson.
Yeah, exactly. Black Panther as well. His father is killed in front of him. He wants revenge. He's willing to do whatever he can.
We're introduced. He has motivation. He learns.
And then at the end, there's a payoff. He won't let vengeance consume him. And then you got Baron Zemo as well. Zemo. He's doing all this stuff, and you realize it's actually a place of, he's trying to get justice, against these superheroes. His family were killed in the collateral damage, and he just wants to make them pay. So they all have like. Everybody has something you can sympathize with. So as you said, there's a lot of arcs going through and a lot of emotional beats.
And I think it all paid off. And especially Marvel infamously has a problem with its villains. And I'm inclined to agree with it, where they get a cool villain, they use him and they throw him away. And then, I mean, that's why the few times they don't, like Loki and Thanos and stuff, that's why we're so drawn to them. And Zemo in this movie, I feel like doesn't get the credit he deserves in terms of being a well-crafted, well-written villain. He's got good motivation. We've seen the guys before who want revenge. That's fine. But, the voicemail, I think, is a great tool for him, and his quest to dismantle the Avengers, not just like, oh, I'll destroy you. No, I'm going to let you guys destroy each other, is brilliant. And he succeeds, more or less. We don't know what the future is at that point, but he dismantles the Avengers and splits the whole team apart. I think that's incredibly well written.
I actually love that little scene between Martin Freeman, who plays Everett Ross, and Zemo, Daniel Bruhl, right near the end, where Ross says, "How does it feel to spend all that time and effort to see it fail so spectacularly?" And then Zemo just simply says, "Did it?"
Yeah.
It's great. Exactly.
I just love the fact that Zemo's plan was to destroy the Avengers from within with a dark secret. Zemo wins, really. Zemo got what he wanted, and I love that about this film. Just because he's in prison doesn't mean his plan failed or he lost. But of course, their differences, Iron Man and Cap, only last for so long. That's one of the reasons why I love this film so much, is because it's kind of a sad ending a little bit, but with certainly a hopeful tag at the end. But yeah, I just love Zemo's plan, you know. And I really like the flashback scene when Bucky is telling Steve and Sam that he's not the only Winter Soldier. We see a load of Winter Soldiers looking pretty dangerous, and you're like, oh, okay, I know where this is going. When the Avengers finally unite, they're going to take down these guys. This was Zemo's whole plan to find out where the other Winter Soldiers are so he can let them loose on the Avengers. You know, when Tony finds out the truth about Zemo, that he faked the bombing to look like Bucky, etc., you think the whole Civil War part of the movie is over. Mm-hmm. There can't be another moment that splits the Avengers. No. When Tony sees the tape of the Winter Soldier killing his parents, all the emotions, as I kind of said earlier, they all kind of spill over with rage.
I was predicting I remember the first time I was watching it, I'm like, oh, is this going to be our finale? That's going to be the uniter at the end? You know, forget your differences. We have to fight all of these super soldiers. And then they completely pull the rug from under you in that final act where it's like, no, Zemo, which he killed them all because he's a man of his word, and he has a great point of trying to eliminate super soldiers and how his hatred for these enhanced beings, which obviously carried towards his appearance in the Bucky and the Winter Soldier show. Yeah, I love that because my jaw hit the ground during that because I'm like, I have no idea what this final act is going to be now.
And I think also that's a kind of brilliant reveal because it's hiding in plain sight. Like the first scene of the film is the Winter Soldier's first mission, and he, drives past next to a car, knocks the car down, and then, flash forward, he's got the vials of serum. But it's like, no, that was Tony's parents that he killed. So you're watching that in context. It's like, you can watch the film from the beginning and gain more from the beginning of the film,
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but the real gut punch to me was when Tony looks at Cap and is like, did you know?
Yeah.
And we're fully expecting him to be like, I had no idea. But when he lingers and he's like, we're like, what?
Yeah.
That broke my heart, where I was like, because it's Cap,
all this time.
Yeah.
It's really interesting from a screenwriting point of view in that scene because we don't get any inkling that Cap is hiding anything from Iron Man. Like, that's all you have. It's like, oh yeah, I did know about the fact that Bucky killed your parents. You're like, whoa, what the hell? There's no clue or anything. Even in the other films, certainly not in this one, there's no clue at all, which is really bold, I think, because that's kind of not what you're really taught as a screenwriter. I've done film studies as well as you, AJ, and it's that you always kind of have to leave a little clue, I would say. But it's just a really interesting choice, and the confidence there from the writers to do that is really interesting. Cool lines, people. What we got?
He's my friend. So was I. I like that.
Oh, yeah. This is for dropping a building on my face. Ching.
Yeah. I really liked Black Panther's line after his dad is killed and he's talking to Black Widow, and he gives that speech of death is a step, isn't the end in my culture. It's more like a stepping off point. Yeah. He gives this really eloquent speech of, death is gonna, you'll run forever. And then the way he ends it with, don't worry, I'm gonna go kill him.
That's what my father believed.
Yeah, I'm not my father.
Yeah, well, he first goes, that's what my father believed. And he's like, but I am not my father. And he's like, I'm going to kill him. And you're like, whoa, okay.
That line gives me chills because it's the perfect setup of this beautiful, poetic, and then you get, no, I'm a man who's thirsty for blood. I need revenge. It's the perfect. I think it's the perfect line. I think it's great.
I also like his line when he's in the police car with Captain America, and he's like, Black Panther is a title from warrior to warrior, from father to son, and now with my father dead, I am king. So tell me, Captain, as a warrior and a king, do you think you can protect your friend from me? You're like, oh wow, you're like, oh shit, man.
That's a badass line, dude. Yeah. That's so good.
Captain America's in trouble if he fucks with this guy.
Tony, you're being uncharacteristically non-hyperverbal is a great one. From Black Widow. Yeah.
I like the twist on the great power comes great responsibility line from Spider-Man when he's talking to Tony, and he's like, if my uncle or so he's very, it's the most cryptic you could be of okay, I can't say the word uncle or power for responsibility. It's like playing Taboo. It's like someone I really cared about once said. Yeah, I loved that. I think it was the right, because I know everyone would have thrown up in their seats if we would have heard another freaking great power line at that point. And, because we just got it like a couple years earlier.
I think because when I first heard that they were going to reboot Spider-Man, I think I was I was excited and I wanted him definitely to be in the MCU, but it was that kind of eye roll of, oh, Jesus Christ, we're going to get a film where he gets bitten and we get all that shit again. Because, you've had it happen twice in like the space of 10 years, and I don't want to see that again. But I like how they give nods to it without addressing it, because it's like, come on, everybody, you know how this goes at this point, Yeah.
Exactly. We all know the great power, great responsibility line. It's the same exact thing of, if I had to see Martha Wayne's pearls bounce off the freaking sidewalk one more time, they knew. And so in this movie, they're like, let's not, people are tired of it. They know about Uncle Ben. Let's just not say it this whole time, basically.
Yeah, let's just get on with it. Also, talking about one of my favorite Spider-Man lines is that a metal arm, dude? That's so cool.
That's awesome, dude.
That's really good.
Multiple contusions detected. Yeah, I detected that too.
Oh, do you remember when when Ant-Man's in his suit and he's like, "Who's speaking? It's your conscience. We haven't talked in a while."
That's my favorite line.
That's probably the best joke in the entire movie.
Oh, you're going to have to take this into the shop. Who's speaking? It's your conscience. We don't talk a lot these days. But I think that's so clever, because that's kind of like Tony is not talking to his conscience. He's not like thinking about what he's doing.
I love that. And that's Ant-Man's role in this is, he's funny. And so his interaction with Cap was funny and stuff. He's like, wow, Mr. Cap, or it was during the fight. He's like, I believe this is yours, Captain America. Like he's just having the time of his life.
I'm good to go, Arrow guy.
Yeah. Oh, actually, talking about Scott, I like his introduction, because he's like, "Oh wow, you're Captain America. I've seen you on TV." And he's like, "You're cool too," pointing at him.
You're great.
You're great. I've seen you as well. You're great.
Thanks for thanking of me.
Yeah, all that super fat. This movie's got a lot of great punchlines in it, which is great, because in this as dynamic as this movie is, you got super emotional, somber scenes that'll bring tears. You've got crazy high octane action, and then you have these really funny jokes that still, after my umpteenth time watching it, still hit. I can't believe that.
Placement of humor, I think, is good as well. Trying not to undercut serious scenes. Have the funny stuff at funny parts. That's one thing I cannot stand in films where it's a really sad scene and then somebody makes a joke. No, fucking don't do that.
Yeah, it's really cheap.
All the jokes are in jokey areas where they're just hanging, they're chilling. That's the appropriate time to make jokes.
Yeah, they didn't undercut the reveals and stuff later.
Yeah, don't undercut emotional stuff. Yeah, because could you imagine if somebody made a funny one-liner at the last battle and, this is so emotional, you killed my parents, and somebody makes a joke, that would have just fucking ruined it. But,
Exactly. They just let it. They had confidence.
But I mean, orange slices are always important, so...
Yeah. I don't know why I like this one. I guess I like when they banter, but there was a bit where Tony, it's right before he explains the kid who died and stuff. He's just kind of messing around in the kitchen and he's like, who puts coffee grinds in the garbage disposal? It's this dumb little one-off. I wouldn't even doubt if it was like improv bit.
Oh yeah. I think I heard some bits were improv, like when he meets Peter Parker and he's like, I'm going to sit down, you're going to move the leg, like that,
Yeah. That bit, the whole bit about him, Aunt May in this, and how Tony's attracted to her, wonderful. I think it was all really good. I forgot to mention, you said like favorite. This is a really, really cheap one, but you said like favorite shots earlier. I remember being in the theater and me throwing my hands up because they do a great job of all the location shots, all the establishing shots. They have the big Lagos or Romania, whatever. But when it showed New York and it said Queens, I almost leapt out of my chair, because that's when I'm like, all right, now we're getting the Spider-Man part.
Yeah, especially when, because I just love the setup. It's like, we need some extra power, manpower. And Black Widow's like, mine's downstairs, where's yours? And he just smiles and it's like Queens. And you're like, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's cool. I love that. Yeah.
Spidey,
that was the perfect bit. Yeah.
Something just flew in me.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Actually, I think I'll go with he's my friend, and so was I, or something. I kind of like that.
Yeah, that's very emotional. Yeah,
I like the Tony talking about like that shield doesn't belong to you, belong to my father.
Yeah, that was nice.
That was good too. Yeah, that one almost feels petty, and that's you can really feel that from Tony. He's like, I need a win. I just lost everything. I lost my parents all over again. I lost my friend and you, Cap. He's just like, give me like my ball. I'm going home kind of thing. It felt really sad.
Oh, actually, even talking, because we haven't talked about many Zemo lines, but there's one line that he says that really sticks out when they see him at the end. And he's like, I've been studying you, how you fight, just everything about you. But now I finally see you. I see a little green in the blue of your eye. It's great to see a flaw. Do you know what I mean? Finally, I see a flaw. And you're like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Such a great villain.
Yeah, an empire toppled by its enemies can rise again, but one which crumbles from within, that's dead forever.
That's so good.
I do feel a little sad in, Winter Soldier and Falcon. What's it called?
I just call it Captain Falcon or Captain Soldier or whatever. We all know what we're talking about.
I just find he was a little disappointing in that show for me. But because him having a purple mask, I know that's very comic book accurate, but it just didn't feel right with what they were doing with him in Civil War. But yeah,
I mean, that's a good point.
Screenplay score, AJ, what are you going for?
I might give the screenplay because again, it's just such an ambitious story that nailed everything I feel like it attempted to do. So I'm inclined to give it like a 9.3. Nice. Because even, give that script to another set of directors. And I mean, I'm not sure how it'll end up, but I know that the foundation is solid.
Because even if the direction was solid, if you didn't have a script like this, we couldn't endlessly quote it or talk about the emotional beats on it. That stuff is inherent in the script, Yeah.
And a movie that's basically an argument, it's an argument between two different parties. You have to have each argument make sense and you can side with each argument. Yeah. And so, I think it was well done.
Even though Cap is clearly right. So Boaz,
those fighting words.
Boaz, what's our score for screenplay?
Oh, I really wanted to mention this before, but I was just saying, didn't you find it like on rewatches and stuff like that? But where he fights alongside Buffy against the German special forces. Buffy, shit. I've been watching a lot of Buffy.
Buffy is in this movie.
I've been watching a lot of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Yeah. She was in it. She was on Team Iron Man. Yeah.
Was Blade there too?
Yeah, he was on Captain America's side.
What?
So, my God, I completely lost my train of thought now. But yeah, I just kind of think it's interesting. They're fighting German special forces. They should have done a wink to that because, they were fighting Germans 70 years ago together, and now they're fighting Germans in the modern day. I just thought that was kind of cool. Should have been like old times, huh? Something like that. I don't know.
No, I don't know about that. But I'm inclined to match AJ up, like 9.3. I think it's pretty solid.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of the better scripts for a MCU film. I agree with that.
Yeah, cool. 9.3 then for us.
All right.
Acting then. I find the acting from Sebastian Stan quite interesting because to me there's not much of a difference between Bucky in this film trying to remember who he is and when Zemo turns him back into the Winter Soldier mode, in Berlin. Like the only real difference I can see in the fight scenes especially is that he walks like a little more menacingly, like he walks with a purpose and that's it. Like, there's not much of a difference to me. There's a difference when Zemo, finishes the Russian words. But after that, not so much. Like, even in the fight scene in Berlin, the fighting style feels the same. It's just as brutal for me. For me, his performance is better in The Winter Soldier. There's more of a clear difference between those characters for me. What do you guys think about Sebastian Stan in this movie?
I think you made a good point. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but I feel like, and I don't believe it's Sebastian Stan's fault, but I feel like every time you see Bucky, he's a little different. Like looking at the show, the Disney Plus show, he has such charisma and he's kind of a bit comedic and stuff too. And I'm like, that's the same guy who, even back in the very first Captain America, it felt a little different. So yeah, I felt like in Winter Soldier, he was a lot more just zoned cold when he was in like the Winter Soldier mode. In this one, it was a little softer than how, how cold it was in the Winter Soldier one. I'm inclined to agree with you. Yeah, I think performances, I don't think anyone outright was bad in this movie. I can't think of anyone that distracted me during their performance.
I guess maybe certainly with Bucky, in a story sense, Bucky is probably getting to grips with trying to remember who he is a bit more. So maybe that's why the difference isn't as strong as it was in the previous film. I don't know.
That's a good point.
It might be that. What do you reckon, Boaz?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point you sort of brought up. Yeah, it might be a missed opportunity. I don't know. Maybe it's kind of like he's still got brain fog and is still very confused as to... I would say you kind of maybe get a sense, when he is Bucky, that he's kind of a little different, but I think much later in the film, like maybe when he has a conversation with Cap before they go to the base, and they're talking about like the girls they used to date and shit like that. Like that was kind of a nice moment. But maybe they should have had more of that. I'm not sure.
I love the acting between Robert Downey Jr. and Tom Holland in Queens. Like RDJ is just so funny when he asks Tom, "Have you ever been to Germany?" And Tom's like I've got homework. And RDJ does this brilliant eye roll and says, "I'm going to pretend you didn't say that." And then when he webs Tony's hand to the door, there's just a brilliant pause before he says, "Get me out of this." Just great comic timing from RDJ.
Yeah, I think he was outstanding in it. The easy one to go to, obviously, is when his world is flipped and it's revealed that Bucky killed his parents. You can see just so much emotion in him. And
just the way he goes from like disbelief to anger and rage is quite interesting to watch. There's even a moment when he's watching his father die. It's like Tony is like on the edge of throwing up slightly. He does this kind of weird shaky thing on his head. And even like Chris Evans' eyes are just like shit, like like a calm panic he's going through. But when Steve says he knew it was Bucky, RDJ is at his calmest just before he strikes Cap. Like he's ready to let all his emotions go now. I'm ready now. I'm just like, fuck it.
It's a great point.
I'm gonna go for it now.
Yeah, I think a really great scene with RDJ is in that scene where he explains the kid who died in Sokovia. That performance to me is because it's easy to come off. I feel like a bad actor would have done it in a way that seems preachy or just seems like milky in the sense of like, this kid died and it's our fault. Instead, it's that classic Tony where it's very matter of fact. And he's like, this kid could have gone to, Cancun or could have gone to Vegas. He's like, that's what I would have done. And it's like, you get that sense of like, this kid was better than us, than me. And he's dead and it's directly our fault. And just the way Robert Downey Jr. carries himself in that scene is it's very convincing to me in the sense of like, yeah, dude, like you're proving your point and stuff. And it's a critical scene because that's when he's talking to the audience in the sense of this is why we shouldn't sign the Accords. Like this is why you should be Team Tony. That's his scene in it. And I think that's really, it was critical and it was perfectly done.
I don't know why he says go to Fort Lauderdale though, because I've been to Fort Lauderdale and an alligator nearly was very scary. I was very small, so I don't know why he said that, but yeah.
Yeah, in the spectrum, maybe even Florida. Why? Maybe go to Miami, go to South Beach. That's where you want to go.
All right.
I like when he's trying to sort of, like, just at the beginning of the airport scene, where he's trying to plead with Captain America to just sort of give up. Like, he's trying to be jokey, and he's trying to be like, we've got 36 hours to arrest you. Can you help a brother out? And stuff like that. And he's just being very jokey, but then I do like where he's like, I'm trying to keep you from splitting the Avengers apart, but just the way he sort of delivers it, it's like, he's kind of breaking here. He's like, really like, for the love of God, please, man, just for a bit. And I quite like that. Just the kind of desperation from, I'm trying to be my calm self, but I'm like desperate that you just stop this madness because you're breaking our family apart.
Yeah,
that's kind of what the feeling.
AJ, favorite performance?
I mean, I think Robert Downey Jr., virtually, you could pick any line. I think that airport one is perfect. I think Scarlett Johansson is pretty understated in this. I really enjoyed her performance, great. Especially the scene with her and Cap when he's at Peggy's funeral. She shows up and she's like, I'm just here to be a friend, man. Like, you need going through trauma. You're mourning. Yes, there's a world of superheroes and all this stuff going on, but I am here as a friend to you. And I think it was she's incredibly soft and warm in that scene. I think it was really, really well done.
I think Scarlett Johansson is such an underrated actress for me. I saw her in Marriage Story. She's extraordinary in that.
Oh, yeah.
But for me, like Paul Bettany as Vision, I think he does an incredible job in this as well. Just balancing this robotic thing with a human side as well. But I think my favorite performance, I'm probably going to go with Robert Downey Jr. Yeah. I think this is his best film for me, certainly in terms of acting. He does some great stuff in Infinity War as well, and in the first Iron Man film. But yeah, I think he's awesome.
I agree. Yeah, I think every scene he's in, he sort of steals the show. And yeah, definitely you feel a lot for him.
Boaz, what's your favorite performance?
Same one. Robert Downey Jr. I think that's 3 Robert Downey Jr.'s.
Cool.
3 Robert Downey Jr.'s out of 3 Robert Downey Jr.'s.
Yeah. Cool. Acting score, AJ, what are you going for? For Captain America Civil War?
My acting score is... I mean, I hate to keep going 9s across the board, but I honestly can't think of a single performance that was outright bad or distracting. So I'm still gonna give it a 9.
Cool. What should we go for then, Boaz?
I personally wouldn't give 9s. I do like everything about it, and as I agree, acting across the board was really good. But I'm still a bit hesitant to give a 9. I'm quite. You know this anyway. I'm one of these that. It's like I'm very rare to give acting 9, or really high. Mm-hmm. But I think a high 8, definitely. I think also it goes to, the stuff that we've reviewed, and I don't want to kind of touch the tips of things like, Daniel Day-Lewis. He's a god in my eyes. He cannot be touched.
God among men. 8.8 then? Should we go?
Yeah. I think, maybe like 8.7.
8.8, I think.
Okay, 8.8.
Yeah, everyone's really freaking good in this.
I think everybody is very good because I think we're all in agreement. Robert Downey Jr. is perfection in this movie, and it's kind of one of those things where you're like, "Is this a Captain America? Is this meant to be a Captain America film? It's more like it should be Iron Man film, right?"
Yeah,
yeah.
But yeah, he's amazing in this.
Right, let's add up the scores then for Captain America: Civil War. Captain America Civil War gets a very healthy 54.5.
Nice.
That's going to be tough to beat, I think.
Very well deserved, yeah.
Genre Geek, AJ.
Yes, sir.
What is your pick for MCU sequels, sir?
When you gave the prompt for this, I was really struggling on which one I wanted to pick, because I feel like MCU... Once they hit their stride with sequels, they've been doing really well with their sequels. But I felt like there was one that had an ambitious job and it completely shifted everything about this character and what's going forward in the MCU. So I chose Thor Ragnarok.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I do love this film.
Welcome to the land of the ice and snow.
Were there any other movies in contention that didn't make the cut?
Yeah, I mean... Spider-Man sequels I enjoy them immensely. I mean, No Way Home had been an obvious one, but I'm like, come on, let's have a little more fun here. I mean, that was really good. Like I said, I love Iron Man 3. I think that's criminally underrated. Even Ant-Man and the Wasp 2, or Ant-Man and the Wasp, or whatever they call it, Ant-Man 2, is fun movie. I mean, it's not a great one, but it's not trying to be a great one. And so I feel like with each movie or each Marvel sequel, once they hit that stride, which I don't even know when, I'm not even sure when it really started. It might have started with Winter Soldier, frankly. They started making good, solo Marvel sequels. I think that they really started to knock it out of the park. But with Thor Ragnarok, though, that was that is near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, I feel like 2014 was a very defining year for Marvel. Because obviously that was the year when Guardians of the Galaxy came out, and that was a huge, for me, that was a huge risk. I had no clue who these guys were. I'm not a huge comic book reader compared to you guys.
Even huge comic book readers had no idea who the fuck these people were.
Yeah. Purposefully had no one gives a crap about them team. They're really not big.
They were incredibly niche. Like, it was like I had to search forums, and most people I got no clue. You got to get to the really experienced Jedi level nerd. Who's like, he knows. Guardians. Nobody knew them.
This team of Guardians isn't even like the original Guardians. Like there was I forgot who wrote it. There was a run in 2008 that was a little popular, but no one gave a crap about the Guardians. I mean, people who say they were huge fans are lying. No one cared about the Guardians.
Because also, I was you should actually watch some really good videos about the history of the Guardians comics, but it was very niche, and even the original didn't have a lengthy series. And the main characters, even for this lineup, they weren't in the comics that much. There's just like one or two episodes of issues of Star-Lord, and he's a very different character.
Yeah, he's not Chris Pratt in the comics.
He's not the same thing at all. You know, and Gamora as well, she showed up as a supporting character for Adam Warlock. And like they're just... And I think Groot was more of a villain, and they came together for like just a couple of issues and like just a few years before the film actually came out in just like one event, the Thanos Imperative or something. So yeah, they're not really a big team. They kind of were like not really a thing, and there's really not much information about them. I would say everything now about them is because of the films.
Exactly.
So I guess from like 2014, I would say that's when Guardians came out, that was when Marvel were taking risks and really succeeding and really pushing on, you know?
Yeah. They've basically built such a name, they can put a film out of whatever. They can do whatever the hell they want. They know they're going to get asses on seats, you know? So they don't need to play it safe now. I'm still waiting for a Howard the Duck movie. They need to do that.
Good luck with that.
He'll get a
good luck with that.
I'm willing to bet money. He's gonna get a Disney Plus series or something. They're not gonna waste Howard the Duck.
Yeah, they've got to do Howard the Duck.
Really?
Yeah, the Howard the Duck, man. You know, especially because he's the first Marvel property that they ever did a movie for.
Yes, they did. That really awful one with I think Tia, what's her face? Weird movie, man.
And it did really bad, and like it's reviewed badly. Nobody watched it, and I think it would be amazing to just go boom on the table, and make a great film. They can fucking do it, you know. I don't think there are any excuses now.
I think they can.
Quoting Thor, is it though?
No, I don't think there are any excuses. If you say they can make a talking tree and a raccoon incredibly popular characters and the film's good, you have no excuse. And Ant-Man, you have no excuse at this point, now, you know?
Yeah, but this is a duck.
No, it doesn't matter. Ant-Man is a man that can control ants. You know, everything is stupid until they do it. So just let them do a Howard the Duck film. Like, I'm gonna really push this. They need to do Howard the Duck.
Really?
Yeah. I'll back you on it. It's one of those things like I used to have a guy on my show who did not read the comics or anything. He's a huge MCU fan. That's his attachment to the Marvel properties. And he was like, man, I'm getting mad that they're killing off, Iron Man, and they're getting rid of Cap, and they're getting, I'm like, yeah, but you don't know how good the Marvel universe is. This is before Shang-Chi even came out. I'm like, you don't realize the characters that you're going to love until we put them in these new things. Introduce you to Moon Knight, introduce you to all these guys that I've been knowing for years. They've got a great bench, and people just don't know that because they haven't been introduced to it yet. And like I said, with, Guardians and stuff, they really did change up how Marvel movies are made, and which can bring us back to the Thor Ragnarok. A guy that I never liked Thor personally in the comics. I respected him and I read his stuff, but I was never a big fan of the god who, handled God problems. So he would save worlds and universes and monsters. But the first Thor I thought was really bad. It felt like a high school play where it was like there was 2 locations. It felt really cheap. I hated bleaching his eyebrows blonde. That looked weird.
Yeah, that was weird.
Thor 2 is a travesty, and I personally have it as my worst MCU movie.
Really?
That's an interesting one.
It's so boring and forgettable.
It is boring. Yeah, it is forgettable. I will agree that it's kind of one of the least memorable ones.
It is a mess, yeah.
I would say, I do actually agree with you, because like the character Thor, I've never been that... When you're talking about characters that most of the audience identify with, your Batmans, your Iron Mans, and what they did with Cap and made him, it's like... They're relatable. They try to make them relatable. Thor has never really been relatable. He is a god, and he acts like a god, and he's better than you. And there's no kind of empathizing with him. He's just too mighty. He's just too good. And and I do think the other films were trying to play it that way. This one definitely gives him a lot of personality, and they've kept that. You're like, okay, now he's quite interesting. He sticks out. He's actually entertaining to watch and to see him go through all this.
Because for me, he's like the funniest character now in Marvel. Thor.
And you think before that, he just used to be. He's essentially the chicken.
He was just stoic. And imagine Thor. Yeah, imagine Thor 1 partnering with the Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, you just can't see it.
Yeah.
But with this movie, it completely rebooted Thor and made him and just a completely different character, which, God, he needed that. Yeah. And so, I think to me, it's also like we talking about like with 2014 did to Marvel in terms of like we can actually have lean more into genres with this, you know, Guardians, and I think James Gunn, we can really thank a lot for what Ragnarok was able to be with the needle drops and the style, you know, the bright colors and the bold everything, you know.
Because this, I think, has always been an interesting thing. Even the early 2000s, when, you know, the superheroes were the big things. You know, you got your Spider-Mans, you got your X-Men's, the other DC properties, and all this. They always try and make it like realistic and grounded. That's always been a thing in the Dark Knight trilogy, and I respect that. But it's like, people won't believe. You know, you move the comic book stuff where it's all colorful, it's all bright, it's all so camp and stuff. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's so that medium.
What are these colors you speak of, says Zack Snyder.
Yeah.
And so everything has been kind of muted. All the costumes are less exaggerated, they're more practical. And I think you're right with Guardians. You know, James Gunn was like, no, we're going to give you like this whole bright colors. It's like the John Romita, Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko, just like the classics, the colors and everything. And people still ate that stuff up. And then I think they really go hard in it with Thor Ragnarok, where you're like, this is like it was done by Jack Kirby. You've just taken a bunch of the Jack Kirby comics and you've made them real. You know, you're not skimping out on the color and the fantasticalness of it. And I think that's pretty cool. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
So AJ, what happens in Thor Ragnarok?
In Thor Ragnarok, we have Thor, who is trying to look into Infinity Stones, and I believe that's exactly how it opened up. He's on his journey. He fights Surtur, who's, you know, the Norse mythology. He's involved with Ragnarok, the end of the world for at least the Norse world. Thor goes through, and he basically what's revealed is that he actually has, I'm really skipping forward here, he is revealed he has a sister because he's trying to find his dad. His dad was on Earth. Loki's like, hit him over here on Earth. They go to his dad, and he's like, hey, I'm dying. So unfortunately, I also had a daughter who's my real firstborn, and unfortunately, I'm the only thing holding her back. So good luck. And then he dips out, and then
gone for a pack of cigarettes and
yeah, right. He's like, hey, by the way, worst time I can leave you with this, but when I leave, you're gonna have a boss fight. And then he dies. And then Hela is introduced, and she immediately destroys Mjolnir, which you know should blow everybody's mind. Loki tries to go back to Asgard, which they immediately ride the Rainbow Bridge up, in which Hela also hitches a ride. And during that, Thor tries to fight her, gets thrown off, and so does Loki, thrown off the Rainbow Bridge into nowhere, which we don't know that at that point, but it's this Junker planet where he is picked up by a Valkyrie, but we don't know it's Valkyrie yet. And he's used as the gladiator fight. He runs into the Hulk, and he's like, hey, this is where I ended up after Age of Ultron. Yeah, this is where I ended up. And it's about Thor's journey and trying to just rediscover who he is appropriately enough, as this is like a reboot for the character, and also try to fight for Asgard and defeat his sister. And that's more or less what happens in the movie.
So directing then, I love the opening scene with Thor and Surtur, like some really creative uses of Thor's hammer, Mjolnir. Like the camera follows Mjolnir around, like hitting a load of demons is just a great visual.
Oh, and then coming back around to get to his hand.
Yeah.
So killing a bunch to get back to his hand.
That was so cool. And like the way he just drops the hammer in a dragon's mouth was just hilarious. And I would say like this is like the best action scene with just Thor to date in any of his own films and the two previous Avengers films put together, really, until this point. You know, it's just a really great opening, I think.
Absolutely.
I think they go into like creative uses of his power and just like epic nature of like he is fighting a horde of demons and a giant demon monster and a dragon like straight up in the first 10 minutes, and it is as wonderful as it sounds. You know, they don't skimp on it. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I completely agree, because I mean, up to this point we haven't seen him do anything really cool with the hammer. Even think of Thor 1. He fights the ice giants, and he does it by like spinning his hammer and hitting the ground and throwing ice at the giant. I'm like, come on, like you have a magic hammer that's because I love Norse mythology and like the things he's done with the hammer. And then his sequel and stuff, he gets a little bit cooler. And like, I think the coolest thing that happened before this movie with the hammer is I think in Thor 1, when Thor puts the hammer on Loki's chest on the Rainbow Bridge and like uses that to kind of pin him down to walk away. I'm like, it's using the hammer, like the gag, I think in Thor 2, when he like hangs it up on the the coat rack.
And that's like the coolest bit. That's
Yeah.
it. I'm just like, really? The action, it's bad in that one.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. But in this opening scene is just, you see him destroying those demons and stuff with the hammer. Just the simple use of, putting it in the dragon's mouth and dropping the dragon and stuff. It's things like that are just fun.
Yeah. I also just love that shot of Surtur firing his laser thing from his staff and Thor essentially like whirling it so much that you got this, like, he's just stopping the blaze, and it's like, it just looks so cool.
It's all cool. And then accompanied with the best track that, oh my God, it's synonymous, I feel like, with Thor.
Yeah, now it has been.
Immigrant song.
Yeah, that as soon as that bass riff starts, you're just like, this is something completely different and special with Thor.
I think it's kind of ironic that the movie with Thor that gives you the best action with his hammer, like, gives it to you in the first 10 minutes and then gets rid of his hammer forever,
like, we're going to destroy it in the next scene. So.
Yeah. I was like, oh, don't do that.
Yeah.
That's annoying.
Yeah, it's like, whoa, he's so cool. And then you go,
he doesn't need the hammer, but dang, it was cool.
And at the end, like, because, it's a sort of hero's arc and a hero's journey, but when he gets his new power, which is essentially he can just summon lightning at will, that end scene was badass as well, where he's just turning into Raiden.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
I love how Thor is introduced to the Grandmaster. Like, Thor wakes up like he's on this theme park ride that is explaining everything about Sakaar. And it's all wonderfully colourful, definitely riffing on the boat ride in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. I love how Thor is travelling like faster and faster through this colour tunnel. And then it ends brilliantly, like, understated in silence, and Thor is just surrounded by the Grandmaster's guards, like, all looking at him in silence while Thor is still screaming. Very funny, just brilliant. And a great introduction to the Grandmaster.
Yeah, the camera gets really close to his face. Everything's like...
Yeah.
The arena fight between Thor and Hulk is pretty cool.
Amazing, yeah.
I love the callbacks from both Avenger films, like Thor trying to do "the sun is getting real low" speech, and then getting
I love that gag so much.
slapped around on the ground. I think my favorite part is when Thor hits Hulk in the face with a hammer while diving over Hulk's axe in slow motion. Really cool. That was very cool. The whole fight was very cool, but a tad short for me. I would have loved to see a little bit more, but I'm selfish. So.
Yeah. I think an extended fight would have been pretty badass. Like, the fight was cool, but it would have been cooler if it lasted a little longer. What was it? Like his fight in Age of Ultron against Iron Man. That lasted for quite a lot longer than this. If it was like that length. But I think it was pretty. Yeah. It was still a pretty good fight, and you had some pretty damn good shots.
Yeah, I think the action in it is really great. I still get chills in that final fight on the bridge, where you get you get the immigrant song again as Thor is just lighting people up with lightning, and he does I don't know if y'all are Street Fighter fans, but he does the bison move where he like dives forward and like does a corkscrew.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All of that is just amazing. I liked Hela, her action in the movie as well, the power she has.
Yeah, I think when you first see, because you see her power like break the Mjolnir, which is a great scene, but her first like proper action scene is where she goes against Asgard's army by herself, and that is a great display. That is a great display of her power. She's just like flipping around. You get a sword, you get a sword. She's like Oprah, the Oprah of swords. You get a sword, you get a sword, you get a sword, and she's just killing everything. Yeah, that was brilliant.
That's funny.
I will say a bit negative. I hated that they just completely got rid of his friends from the first movie, because they're like Ray Stevenson, one of the actors in it.
Yeah,
I love him. He's still the best Punisher I've ever seen. He was in Punisher Warzone.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I would definitely say rewatching it.
I didn't miss them though, to be fair.
Well, but rewatching it again as well, because they have such a pivotal role in the first and second film. So if you're like there and you're like, they get killed so quickly.
One of the guys, the first dude to die, that's Shazam. That's Zachary Levi. Yeah. And he doesn't even get a line.
It's just so unceremonious. It's just like, boom, they're just dead.
But I just love the confidence in Taika to do that. You're like, I don't care about these guys. I'm just going to kill them straight off. I'm just like, that is so confident.
Maybe that's him like wiping his hands of the previous films. He's like, Listen, this is the cast of the other films. They're just dead. Everything's dead.
Yeah, well, yeah, it is. It is. That's what this film is, really, isn't it?
Like, yeah, it really is a reboot by all tenths. Yeah.
Yeah, it wipes the slate clean because, you know, his dad dies, you know, his friends die, his hammer gets destroyed, his planet is taken over. He's a slave. Like, he is just stripped down to the bone, you know, and then has to crawl up again, you know.
I think my favorite parts in that final fight, like Loki using his helmet as a weapon, I thought that was very creative. But I think my favorite part is when Hulk does a wrestling move on a giant wolf over his shoulder. That was awesome.
Yeah, it does like a freaking German suplex.
Yeah, that was just like...
Yeah,
I can't believe what I'm watching here.
Yeah,
literally WWE in Marvel.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think there was so many good shots of like you know, we were talking about slow motion in the previous one, but like just picturesque giant shots of just like the action happening, and sometimes slow motion. But you just like, you know, I could frame that. That looks really nice. So, you know, things that come to mind, as I said, you know, fight scene at the beginning and him squaring off against Surtur, and I think that looks really cool. Him running at the Hulk and, you know, them punching each other. I think that looks awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, Scourge, how he dies. I love that. Just jumping down.
Yeah, that's a cool shot. Yeah.
And just like that just does look like it came out of a comic panel. It's like it just looks epic.
With Des and Troy?
Des and Troy, yep.
Just a splash page of just it was pretty awesome.
Karl Urban is one of the greatest actors because he's willing to just do the dumbest stuff for the gag, and he commits so hard to it. I loved him in this movie. I love Karl Urban so much.
I like him with the shake weights.
My stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got it from Tex Arsh.
Yeah. Des and Troy together, they destroy.
I love all of it so much. I love the gag with Matt Damon getting his MCU cameo.
Yeah.
I love the whole gag with Loki and stuff with doing that. There's like the big statue of him, and there's the play and the obviously I feel like the real star of this is the comedy in this movie, but little things in that bit where after Loki in the play Loki dies, like the camera cuts to the choir as they start like chanting during the death. It's all just perfectly timed comedy.
I think my favorite part in that is Anthony Hopkins as Loki, but he's pretending to be Odin.
Yeah, he's eating grapes and stuff.
And when he says, "Oh shit," when he notices Thor, I laugh out loud every time. It's just and then you get the classic, you know, brilliant Tom Hiddleston grin when he reveals himself. I just love that scene. I really like the action scene where Thor and co fly on the Grandmaster's spaceship, and Thor and Valkyrie jump from ship to ship, taking them out. It's just really cool looking. You know, the whole sequence is very vibrant and colorful, and there's so much going on, but everything is clear. You're not lost in the action at all. Because I think sometimes in Civil War, you do get slightly lost sometimes.
Because there can be quite a lot going on. I think this is kind of the opposite. Like, so in Civil War, I think there's a kind of chaos to it, and there's a lot going on in each bit. With this, you do have like just entire scenes where it's like these two characters together, or this backdrop. You've got them fighting over here, and it's very clear where everything is, and it's very wide. It's very like, oh yeah, here's where everything's located. Great big splash page. As I said, you know, scenes where you can see just everything occurring.
Yeah, I just love how simple the direction is from Taika Waititi. I think that's how a lot of the comedy stuff works so well. It's because the direction is so simple. It just allows the actors to do their thing, you know. You're not being distracted by any, like, crazy camera work.
Yeah.
Favorite shot or scene, AJ?
Oh, that is sincerely tough. Because, like, there's gags that I think are just hilarious. There's action that's really, really cool. I think my favorite scene, if I had to just cut one out, it's Hela holding Thor's neck and like, "What are you the god of again?" and repeating that over and over, and then his eyes light up blue, and then you just see the lightning strike down. I think, and then the music freaking starts. I got chills now thinking of it. That'll never not get me excited.
Yeah, I do like Led Zeppelin.
That's the best. Yeah.
I think for me, you know, the Hulk wrestling move, Boaz.
I would say my two favorite shots, one, him landing on the bridge, and then, you know, lightning in his eyes and stuff. I mean, that was just cool. That's badass, because you're like, he's getting serious now. and then you have the fight scene where it's like, yeah, he's entered beast mode, and I just love that scene. In fact, that whole fight I think is really cool, and it's just done so rock and roll. Yeah, everybody having a really cool rock and roll entrance, like Loki and Scourge later, and Valkyrie as well, with all the fireworks going off, and she's like, and that's it. It's just really cool. Just strutting. I think just all rock and roll entrances. Another shot I quite like. I like the shot, not necessarily the scene in the shot, and this is happening quite late into the film. But Hulk just jumping at Surtur's face, I think, just looks awesome. It just looks cool. Like, Surtur's face just fills...
Hulk, what are you doing?
He just fills the screen. His head fills the screen. And then you got little Hulk just going, It just looks so cool.
Big monster!
Yeah, but when I first saw the trailer, that was the last scene in the trailer.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa! It's like, that thing looks massive. So I still have an affinity for that particular shot. I think that looks great.
Directing score, Boaz, what should we go for? I think high 8. I think Taika does a great job. Yeah. It's very simple, but I think, as I said, like, because it's so simple, a lot of the comedy just works so well. So like 8.8?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, 8.8.
I would actually go a little higher just because I feel like Thor is now synonymous with Taika Waititi. If you don't recall, like even those like commercials that they had.
Oh, where he has a flatmate.
Team Daryl.
Daryl, that's it, Daryl.
That's how Taika got the gig. Is he
really?
Yeah, he crushed those trailers with Hemsworth, and Kevin Feige or whoever was like, "Okay, here's a movie," and Taika's style, and you can feel him in all of this. The way the characters are they're completely changed in this, and that's completely thanks to him. And even when you see Thor in Endgame or Infinity War, you can feel Taika still in Thor's performance. So I would say that the direction of this is very, very well done. And in fact, I'm inclined to give this one like a 9.5.
Oh, really?
Just because I think if you remove Taika, completely different movie.
Yeah.
The comedy, even the dumber bits, won't work in the way that Taika encouraged the improv apparently in this movie. Like the gag where Thor was talking about, it's like, when I was a little kid, Loki thought it'd be funny to turn me into he was like a frog, and he loves frogs, and then there was a snake or whatever. I picked him up and he's like, and he stabbed me. I'm like, apparently that was an improv, really? And that's awesome. Taika understanding his actors, understanding Chris Evans. I think give this screenplay to another director, and I don't think we get anything near what we got with this movie.
Because I think what's great is in the parts in the film where they look like they're having fun, Thor's having fun, and Valkyrie's having fun, and people are having fun. Jeff Goldblum is always having fun.
I can't believe we haven't even mentioned Goldblum yet.
Yeah, I mean, Goldblum is just always just, he's just enjoying himself. But you feel like they are really having fun. I think probably to work on a set with Taika is just is quite a good experience.
Screenplay then. I think the comedy stuff works so well is because the story is pretty simple, really. Like, our heroes, get stranded on Sakaar and try to find a way back to Asgard to stop Hela. That's it.
Asperg,
yes. There's not much character development here at all, but it's just it allows so much room to create like amazing comedy moments, So
I'm very inclined to agree. The story definitely takes a backseat. The screenplay is not supposed to be, super strong and, this big story, because that's not, I don't believe this is the kind of movie it was trying to be. So I think definitely screenplay is weaker, if we're going film versus film. This is definitely the weaker screenplay, but it also didn't, it was almost like that was the launching off point for what the movie became.
Saying that, there is some people say this film doesn't balance like the comedy elements with the serious moments enough. Like, when Asgard gets destroyed at the end, it's immediately followed by a joke. Korg says the damage is not too bad as long as the foundations are still strong. We can rebuild this place. It will become a haven for all peoples and aliens of the universe. Now those foundations are gone. I'm sorry. It's funny, but this is a huge moment, Asgard getting destroyed. Like, the emotions aren't really there, but the joke is still really funny. There's only 2 genuinely serious scenes for me. They're both with the real Odin. That's it,
Yeah.
is there enough of a balance here in this film? I mean, would you call this film an out-and-out comedy?
Comedy, yes.
Yeah.
I would call it if I had to pick a category, I'm putting it in comedy.
Yeah.
It's, I feel like there are action movies with comedic elements, and this is a comedy with action elements in it.
Which a lot of Marvel films fall into.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think it could have been more serious. They could have let, like the very thing we talked about with Civil War, let the serious moments really breathe. Let Asgard, the world was destroyed. That's a really huge moment. That's immediately cut with the joke, and albeit a hilarious one, it could have, we could have let that moment breathe a bit longer. Odin dies. Thor loses his only other parent. We don't even get. I think pacing wise, that was a bold decision to immediately put us in an action scene, but that emotion didn't get to really breathe. And so, it could have allowed those moments to really breathe and marinate, keep us, don't be afraid to let us be sad for too long before making us laugh.
But at the same time, I think it's kind of clever writing to actually make that scene funny because, they say, Asgard is a people, not a place. So you're kind of allowed to laugh a bit more, I guess, in that moment, possibly.
Because it's not as tragic.
Because they make that quite clear that, Asgard is a people, So I thought that was actually quite clever, actually. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it works because the comedy is good and it isn't like you don't roll your eyes at the joke, you're laughing at it. And so I think it's the confidence in oneself to know that this is funny, it's going to make you laugh. Making you laugh is invoking more of reaction if I were to just let you sit there sad. So instead, you're sad, you get your sad, but it is cutting. And it does help put in perspective too of, the whole, we are the people, the land that we were standing on isn't Asgard. Yeah. We are Asgard. And so I think, that it's confidence, I feel like, in the comedy.
I feel like Taika Waititi was desperately needed for Thor in this movie. We've kind of talked about this a bit, but because ever since the amazing Comic Con stunt in 2013, where Tom Hiddleston came out on stage as Loki, like Marvel realized they needed more Loki in Thor: The Dark World, which was certainly the best part of that film by far. And that film ended up being a massive mess, but they kind of forgot about Thor, and the fact that he wasn't very interesting. He's a space Viking. Like, how can you make him boring?
Well, I think because in most films he's got the personality of a plank of wood, but like in this one, he's got a personality.
But in this film, for example, I feel like the fact that Thor gets the better of Loki when Loki tried to betray Thor by setting off the alarm in the garage, but Thor had to put an electric thingy on Loki's back and electrocutes Loki, and I feel like this is an example of Marvel making Thor cool again, not just Loki. Thor now is arguably the funniest character in the MCU. I just really like that little simple scene of like, they're still keeping Thor as the main character and still making him the central point and making him learn from his mistakes. He's not getting fooled by Loki again.
I've always complained about that, where I felt like Thor was handcuffed to Loki and that you cannot have a Thor movie or anything Thor without Loki being involved. And I love Loki. I think he's, wonderful, but I'm like, it doesn't give the right respect to Thor. And so when they quote killed him in Thor 2, and then they also teased that he wasn't really dead, I'm like, come on. I got a little bit excited. I'm like, maybe Thor will finally have his moment. And like I said, with this, more or less reboot of Thor, we got to actually give Thor the respect he deserves, and we still get our Loki, but it isn't like I don't feel like you leave the movie thinking, man, look, like this was a great Loki movie with Thor in it. This was a Thor movie with an appropriate amount of Loki peppered in.
Whereas like Thor: The Dark World, it's, this is a Loki movie with Thor in it, but just with Thor in the title.
I would also say, a lot of the other characters are quite interesting as well. So, it's not like he's the only interesting character. Thor is the main guy, and he's very interesting, and he's got a personality there. But then you also have like
Korg is by far the best character.
Yeah, Korg is a great addition.
A great addition, an awesome addition, you should say.
Awesome addition, yeah. And who can forget Meek? No, I'm joking. But everybody forgets Meek. Meek's dead.
Meek's dead.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Oh no, he's alive, guys.
I actually think Hela is a pretty damn good villain, and I do quite like her. Well, I like her.
Yeah.
I like her too. Marvel treatment, though. She's really cool, and now she's gone.
I think she's a step up from, like, say, Thor 2 and Malekith, and most of the other kind of... Well, anybody could be.
I think any villain would have been better, to be honest.
My gag, you would have won. My gag with people when I talk crap about Thor 2 is I'm like, name the villain. And they go, So the fact that you were able to do that is already incredible.
Yeah, but I think she was kind of very enjoyable, and it kind of annoyed me that she died, because that falls into that sort of... You've just got now an interesting villain for Thor, finally, who isn't like his brother. And now now she's dead? Oh, Jesus, man.
And she's gone.
That's really disappointing from a script point. But I just kind of like her sort of, smarmy sort of cockiness. And yes, I don't know. She's just really, really arrogant and sort of...
She's having a lot of fun, Kate Blanchett.
Yeah, she's just having a lot of fun.
Yeah, I dig her too. I'll be completely honest. So the trailer for Thor Love and Thunder came out. He's obviously going to be working with... Thor's going to be working with the Guardians, obviously. But I am so much more excited to see more Korg with Thor.
Oh yeah,
the scenes with them together. I'm like, yes, that's my ticket right there. I yay Guardians. I love them. Korg though, but give him all the screen time.
Hell yeah.
My best conversation with him and Thor is where he's talking about how his hammer got destroyed, like my previous work, my hammer. I just love it.
Yeah. You got pulled off by a hammer.
Yeah. Oh my God, the hammer pulled you off.
Oh my God, your hammer pulled you off.
Yeah.
Funny lines then, people. What are we going for?
He's like, sounds to me like that hammer was a bit of like more of a person, like the whole bit he has where he like actually legitimately
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like losing it was akin to losing a loved one. He's like, yeah. Yeah, it was.
It's like, you get it. It's the best.
Oh, I love when he says, "Oh, yuck! There's still someone's hair and blood all over this, guys. Can you clean up the weapons once you finish your fight?" Disgusting slobs.
It's the best, the absolute best.
And he says, "Oh, Thor, you want a big wooden fork?" No, not really useful unless you're fighting off 3 vampires that are huddled together.
Yeah. God bless Taika, man.
Yeah.
He's the best.
And I love his introduction. He's like, "Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Gorg. I'm kind of like the leader in here. I'm made of rocks, as you can see, but don't let that intimidate you. You don't need to be afraid unless you're made of scissors. Just a little rock, paper, scissors joke for you."
Oh, it's so good.
Piss off, Ghost. Yeah. You got me at the same time. That's great, yeah.
It's the best.
And a riff on the introduction I gave Boaz. Well, I tried to start a revolution, but I didn't print enough pamphlets. So hardly anyone turned up, except for my mum and her boyfriend, who I hate.
Oh, what was it? Did you remember when he talks about the previous champion, which ends up being the Hulk?
Oh, it was like Doug.
He's like, Doug fought him and lived. No, Doug's dead.
Yeah.
Another day, another Doug.
Yeah. God bless Korg. He's the MVP. Yeah. He's the best.
Oh, yeah, no, this whole thing is a circle, but not a real circle. More like a freaky circle. Just like the whole of Korg's dialogue is just funny, I just love doing the voice as well. It's great.
It's really good. Yeah. He's just so happy to be there. He's dumb optimistic. Just, hey, man, we're going to go. Want to come?
Yeah. Then you have seen Ragnarok, the fall of Asgard, the great prophecy. Hang on. I'll be back around shortly at the beginning.
Oh, I actually love when they address each other. He's like...
it's like, oh, yeah. Thor, son of Odin.
Yeah, Surtur is like, Thor, son of Odin. Surtur, son of a bitch. But my father killed you.
Because that's more or less the beginning of the movie. Like, that's really, like, as it's happening, I was still in shock of, like, wait, what? What is this movie going to be? Because I had no idea. Because I was actually not familiar with Taika Waititi's work beforehand. I watched Into the Shadows and all that stuff, and Wilderness People after Thor. So as the movie's going, because I feel like the trailer didn't really convey exactly what this tone was. So as the movie starts with him in the cage with the skeleton, and he's like, "You're probably wondering how I got here." I'm like, what? this isn't what Thor does. And then the gag with him spinning on the chain was just, I'm like, oh my God, this isn't going to be like an hour 40, whatever time this is of just joy. And I was right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a crown. I thought it was a big eyebrow. It's a crown.
Yeah.
There's a cool one from Loki when after Hulk smashes Thor up and Loki's like, yes, that's how it feels. I'm just a huge fan of the sport.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the gag where Goldblum, he's got the guy and he got the scepter. He's like, well, like, I pardon you. He's like, oh, thank you. I pardon you from life. And he taps him. But Thor's reaction to it, where he's just, oh my God, as he's melting. It's just disbelief. It's
like, oh, I'm stepping in it.
It's so cool. It's so horrible.
I love it. The bit where Thor sees Hulk naked. He's like, that's naked. He's very naked. That's in my brain now.
Yeah.
Strongest Avenger. Access denied. Damn you, Stark. Point Break. Welcome, Point Break.
It's so good.
Banner. Welcome, Strongest Avenger. What?
The cast in this, like you said earlier, is incredible. The Grandmaster is one of my favorite. He needs to come back because he survives. If you don't recall,
he does,
there's that little post-credit scene. He might have been, ripped apart by the people on the planet, but he survives. I really want him back.
I like when he's like, yay, we did it.
Yeah. Can't have a revolution without.
You can't have a rebellion if you don't have a guy to rebel against.
Exactly.
Oh yeah. Good. Call it a draw.
It feels like I love whenever Goldblum shows up because it's him, Christopher Walken. Like there's these actors that you feel like they're actors who lose themselves in the role,
just get free reign,
versus the actors who are like, this is me in the movie.
So I would say Samuel Jackson, wherever the hell he is, he's Samuel Jackson.
Exactly. Yeah.
Christopher Walken. Jeff Goldblum. Like they've just got such eccentric personalities, and that's just what they are. And that's what you come to watch. You don't come to watch Jeff Goldblum pretend to be some sort of space dictator. You come to watch Jeff Goldblum be Jeff Goldblum.
Exactly. And he's just so the bit where they steal his spaceship and they hit the button and it's him. It's like, it's my birthday. It's so dumb. It's so good.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that line where they're like, where are the weapons? It's like, it doesn't have weapons. He uses it for parties and orgies. It's like, you say orgies? Don't touch anything. Yeah.
Screenplay score, Boaz. What should we go for? I think structurally, this is very simple, as we've all kind of said. But again, like, there's so many great lines. I don't think I've written so many lines on a podcast episode before. There's still so many we haven't spoken of, but I don't think 9s, because there's been a lot of like seismic MCU films in terms of the script, event changing. This one is certainly a soft reboot of the Thor character. And I think it's just so well written in terms of that. 8.8 again, maybe
we could go an 8.9 maybe.
I'm happy with that. Out of a lot of the MCU films, this is one you want to rewatch. This has huge rewatch value, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was worried about it the first time I saw it, where I'm like, this was wonderful. I wonder how it'll hold up on a second viewing now that I'm kind of prepared for the gags, but it's still, every time I watch it, it's such a joy. I think the plot is very, very simple. I think that's very tactful. I think it's purposefully done because
definitely.
I don't think you can have as much fun as we did in this movie if there was a lot.
I also think it kind of, like, really the plot is, Hela is released and she's trying to take over the universe and he's got to get his world back. But you have this big B plot of him having fun in Sakaar. And I think that's, that's where most of the comedy, most of the action, most of the color is. But it is mainly a kind of chill out movie with this sort of epic setup and epic payoff.
Yeah. Because all like Hela wants to do is find the Bifrost sword. That's it, really.
Yeah, she just wants to rule Asgard. She's like, I want mine.
You can't have two, because if you've got two plots going on and they're both intricate, that's just gonna it's gonna be a bit much.
I think it takes more skill to pull back and more restraint, and fight that urge to like, but we got to do that, or write this and that. Like, no, pull it back. I know it's hard to fight that, but so I think it's I'd give it a good 8.5. It's simple, but it's still effective in that we get the whole. I mean, we didn't even mention, Doctor Strange is in this movie too. We get all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really cool cameo. Yeah.
Yeah, all that stuff still moving the story forward, but he still has that very simple, like, what is the movie about? Thor discovering himself and fighting to save Asgard. Like, that's really it. And then you can go into the nuance of what really happens. But I think it was purposefully simple, and I respect it and I appreciate it for that.
And even with the Doctor Strange stuff, yes, it pushes the plot forward, but again, that's filled with gags. Like, I've been falling for 30 minutes. You know,
or just the constant teleportations and smacking into shit.
I love how that those edited look great.
Yeah, that was edited really well, where you feel like you do feel like you're teleporting with Thor. I'm just like, Jesus Christ. I love when he gets his umbrella again and it's smashing through like everything in Doctor Strange.
Yeah, it takes a minute.
Sorry.
I actually forgot that in shots. I really like that shot where Thor in his human civvy clothes and Loki in their civvy clothes turn into god form. I think that's the only time that's ever happened, and that looks really cool. And I like that to be a nod to the comics that was never explored in the films, that they could switch back and forth, and that just looks really cool.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Acting then. I love the little scene Anthony Hopkins has with Thor and Loki in Norway as he's saying goodbye to them. It's just a really beautifully acted by all of them. Like, Chris Hemsworth brings brilliant emotion to it. Anthony Hopkins is effortless in what he's doing. But when Hopkins says, "I love you, my sons," the reaction Tom Hiddleston has on his face is amazing, where you can't believe what he's just said. And it does get to me a bit sometimes. It is quite an emotional scene. It's pretty powerful, especially when it's quite early in the film as well. It's just like, wow, these guys are really making this work,
Yeah, all of that, the dramatic stuff. I don't feel like comedy gets appreciated as much. It doesn't get the respect it deserves in terms of the skill to do it. Making someone laugh is hard. And looking at words and say those words and say it in a way that's funny. It's really difficult. So everyone that is in this movie that's able to make you laugh, and Tessa Thompson's character in it, her journey too in it. I think it's all of it done incredibly well. And so I love the acting in this.
We covered Leaving Las Vegas in our last episode with Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, I was listening to that.
And Valkyrie is basically Nicolas Cage in this film. Like, she's gone to Sakar to drink herself to death.
Just drinking herself to death.
It's probably like the funniest entrance into the MCU for me, where she just arrives on her ship and walks down the ramp and falls off because she's really drunk. Just simple slapstick comedy, never fails. Drunk people falling over. Like, it's very difficult not to laugh at that.
Yeah.
I love it when just before Thor and Hulk fight in the arena, Thor says, "Loki, look who it is." And it cuts to Tom Hiddleston, who looks absolutely terrified, like we've never seen him before. Just a brilliant, funny facial expression there. I love the little get help scene where Thor is trying to convince Loki to do it, but Loki's like, "We are not doing get help." And then cut immediately to the elevator doors opening, and Thor throws Loki. Just a great comedy acting from both of them. Funny. Tom Hiddleston playing the straight man and Thor playing the comedy guy.
The drama in that scene too, because that's before that. It's when they're in the elevator and Thor opens up to Loki, and he's like, "You were the world to me," and this, really, you get that they're brothers and stuff. And so I thought that was a very sincere moment amongst all the, hijinks and stuff in the movie. I think that was a very touching scene.
Favorite performances, people, what we going with? Boaz.
Oh my God.
This is very easy for me, but
yeah. I don't know. It's kind of difficult for me. Hiddleston, I'm not sure.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I like Goldblum, actually. He's pretty funny. I don't know. I like a lot of the actors in there. I don't think in my thing somebody is like head and shoulders over everybody else, but that's just my opinion.
This is a very strong ensemble movie where I think it's a good thing that I don't think anyone outright stole the show. I enjoyed Korg a ton, but it's not like he popped up and then nothing else anyone said in that scene was funny either. So I think Chris Hemsworth deserves a lot of respect in this. It's his movie, and he is just we're really shown how charismatic he is. And so I think without his strong lead in this, it would have been a weaker film. And so I really loved Hemsworth's performance in this.
Yeah. I feel like certainly Taika definitely recognized that very early on that Chris Hemsworth is a really funny guy, and they're definitely playing on that. And with a lot of these scenes and all the improvised scenes, I guess that a lot of that comes from the first meetings they have when they're talking about this film. It's like, yeah, this dude is funny. I did not expect that. But for me, my favorite performance is a guy made of rocks, and I wasn't intimidated. It's got to be Korg, played by Taika Waititi. I think he's just genius, and I love every scene he's in. I just love this very dry Kiwi comedy that he brings. And I love all of his other films as well. So it's got to be Korg for me. Acting score, Bowers, what should we go for?
I might edge it out over everything. I'm not sure.
Really?
What do you reckon?
Should we go 9 or 8.9?
Go 8.9.
Because, there's some great dramatic stuff as well. As I mentioned, that scene on Norway actually just really, really effective.
Even like really subtle stuff, even from the rest of the cast, I think was pretty good. Valkyrie, when she's like thinking about, where he's like accusing her that she's a coward and stuff, and she's been through some shit. I can feel that, where she's like, listen, you have no fucking idea, what I witnessed and what I went through. I can feel that. Yeah. And even Scourge, Carl Urban, really thinking he's joined the wrong side here, where he's meant to execute civilians, and he's just like, I am not comfortable with this. But you can see that, and Kate Blanchett being smarmily evil and stuff.
I'll keep the math simple. I'm going to give it a flat 9. I think everyone, I never would have guessed that everyone in this movie was as funny as they actually were. I don't think I've seen Carl Urban in a lot of comedy. I mean, he like The Boys is funny and stuff, but just outright comedy.
He's in a lot of serious stuff.
Yeah. And so I'm blown away how everyone in this movie gets the tone and fits the tone. So I love it. I think making someone laugh is a skill that is not easily done.
Yeah. I think it's very difficult, because even when you were saying like the pratfalls where she falls and stuff, and that's funny, you can't help but laugh. But I think really sometimes the setup for something can be funny in print and just completely fail in execution. So you go, somebody does something funny and you're like, okay, but then you can film that and you can act it just a little wrong. You get the timing just a little off, and it's just not funny. But everybody's timing and there's a lot of funny stuff in there, has to be on point. It has to be on point to be funny, and everybody is on point. So absolutely, you can't fault them for that.
Right, let's add up the scores then for Thor Ragnarok. Thor Ragnarok gets 53.6.
All right.
Captain America wins this one with 54.5, so it's a very, very tight one. Just a few more 9s in Civil War, I think.
I'm not mad at that. I firmly think that if I have to be like objective, Civil War is the better movie.
Yeah.
But it's the conversation I've had on my show. There's a difference between better and favorite. I enjoy Ragnarok personally more. I like the happiness that it brings me, but I'm also fully aware that Civil War is a better film.
Yeah. So basically, watching them back to back, when I watched them, it's like I felt I love Civil War, and we were just going through it. I felt drained. You feel drained because it's so good, but you're like, I'm emotionally drained watching this. And it's it's a good film, but you can give it those high stuff. And there's a lot of really good films that are in my top 10 that I feel so drained with. I can watch once,
Yeah.
But there are. I think Thor Ragnarok isn't as as you said, objectively better, but it's such a good time. It's such easy viewing that I reckon I could watch that like more. But I still do think Civil War is the better film. But I think, as you said, Thor Ragnarok is the more enjoyable film. So.
Yeah, so looking forward to Thor Love and Thunder. It's just going to be a laugh riot, I think. Right, next episode then, as Top Gun Maverick is out. Very excited for that one. We'll be talking Tom Cruise films, and we should have a guest for that one again from the Infinite Film Club podcast. AJ, you have been amazing. Thank you very much. Is there anything you would like to plug, and where can we find you with your podcast?
It's been a pleasure. Thank you guys so much for having me on here, and I had a great time. I'm AJ from Genre Geeks. We're a nerd pop culture podcast, so we cover all things nerdy every week. So movies, video games, comics, things like that.
Awesome.
Yeah, you can check out our show. Every week we drop some more nonsense. We're pretty nonsensical, so I wouldn't prepare for anything too in depth.
Well, could use a lot more of that. So.
Oh, that's our bread and butter is just nonsense. So that's you can find us anywhere: Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff at Genre Geeks.
Nice. Thank you then, AJ. Bye-bye. It has been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been great knowing you, man.
Yeah, man.
Of course, bye-bye to Boaz. You can turn the printer off now. You don't need to print any more pamphlets. It's fine. Goodbye. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.
That's it for this week's pod. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. If you would like to find out more about the podcast or suggest future topics for us to discuss related to upcoming releases, let us know on Instagram at Film vs. Film Podcast and on Twitter at FVF_podcast. Remember, please subscribe. Pod signing off.